Okay, so a lot of these talks are actually recorded so people can watch them later. People are in Australia and America and New Zealand, so the fact that people aren't here now doesn't mean they won't be watching later. So I think we'll get started. I was expecting Heidi, but I don't know where she is. So Ruby's going to see if she can find out who she is. Ruby, you might be able to find out through Nikki because she's the one who contacted her, and Anessa. Yeah. Hi, Diane. Hi, Sophie. So Diane, I don't know if you've met. Oh, Grace is. Remember Mairead? Say her name again.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mairead's daughter, Grace.
Oh, hi, Grace.
So
Yeah.
Mairead came to Diane's class. Yeah, and taught some great stuff. Sophie, hi. Sophie, hi. So we have Tabitha and Grace and Shivani with us today. And I just wanted to really open up the conversation. First, we're going to have a conversation that's really guided by me, and then maybe we can open up to some questions. But the title of this session is The Future of Wellbeing. So what I'm finding interesting is asking young people, these are all ambassadors, people who've taken the ambassador course, what their perception is of, people at school today and in their world, and what they envision the future could look like. Blue sky thinking, if they had a magic wand, what would you guys like to see in your context, whether it's in your world in general, like friendships and school and holidays and free time. How would you like things to be different for you? And can you like envision that for us? So who'd like to start? Who's got some ideas they'd like to share? Grace, go ahead. I thought it was going to be you.
Um, well, I definitely think a massive thing for me is, well, I'm doing A levels at the moment. I think you guys are both doing A levels as well, or have done them. But you literally have like no time to do anything. And I was thinking, like, with A levels, I literally don't even have time to do yoga in my own time because I have so much work going on. And I just think it's such a shame that at the age of like 16, 17, 18, you literally have no time to do anything that you want to do, and it's just schoolwork so much. And then obviously you go into a job and that then you don't have any time either. So I just think it's a shame that there isn't time because everything's like focused on academic work, and there's so much academic work that you just can't do anything.
I think that's an obvious point, and really important to make, Grace, because it doesn't have to be like this, does it? It could be so different, and the importance of having free time to pursue what you love, and to know what feeds your soul and what makes you feel good, and to avoid that and to not have time for that obviously is going to impact your health, isn't it? So, and I know that Shivani feels the same, because I know you both, well, all three of you are really hardworking as well, and keen to have good grades. Tabitha, you're in a slightly different position now, as much as you're taking a sabbatical. So have you noticed, like, I know that there's lots of things going on for you, but have you noticed the difference in your life now, like when you're not at school and stuff? Tell me about that.
Well, I really have. First of all, I want to say I completely agree with Grace, because I actually did my A levels this year, and I found my mental health really deteriorated around that time because I basically was just revising for like all day for months on end and not looking after myself. So I think schools should definitely put something in place where they maybe take the pressure off a bit and sort of understand that we need to have our own time just to relax and look after our minds. But so that's where I found a big difference in my gap year, because not only don't I have to study, I have like more time to spend on and actually, want to do. So I got a job at a place that I love, and just having all of that like positive energy is really good. But yes, I've had a lot more time to do yoga and actually start teaching it. Extremely rewarding, and if anything, it sort of pushed me to do yoga more. Like if I was feeling lazy and I was just on my own, I wouldn't do it, but because I have that responsibility of teaching a class, it sort of pushed me into doing it. which has sort of increased my love for yoga again, because I sort of lost it over the A-level year where it was all just like panic and chaos. I had no time to stop. Yeah.
It really feels to me, I mean, I don't know much about your situation now, but it really feels to me like you've got a great balance in place. So you've got the job, so you've got kind of money coming in, which is giving you autonomy. And then you're doing charity work. But Tabitha's behind our TikTok account. She created a TikTok account for us and she's running that. So that's her charity work, which is fantastic. We're so grateful for that. And then you've got your yoga. So you're creating, you're creating classes and that. And then because you're doing the yoga, you're taking care of yourself. So you have all these different elements, which you, like you say, would really not in place when you're doing your A levels. And it sounds like there's not much time for socializing, there's not much time for thriving, or just caring for yourself. How did you negotiate all of that, Shivani, for you? In that, did you find space and time for yourself during this year? Like, do you just feel that you're kind of always catching up?
In the past, I think I've struggled with managing my time, but I think like now I'm in the final year of A levels, so I've gotten to a point where I kind of know when to stop studying and when to take a break, but I've definitely struggled with it in the past.
And is your social life quite active, or do you have quite a quiet life? Like, do you have hobbies outside of school other than yoga?
Yeah, I actively make sure that my life is not just studying, because I've fallen into that in the past, but it's not been useful to me.
So the next question then, if we were to really like blow our minds and go like, okay, given a magic wand, over the next couple of years, you could completely change the school system, completely change the way young people live their lives. What would you put in place apart from just simply more time for yourselves? Is there anything else that you could envision at this stage?
I think a focus on mindfulness particularly would be useful for teenagers, because our teenage years are a time of social media influences, where we're exposed to so many influences and we're choosing between doing what is right and wrong. And something that has stressed me out and made me feel very uncomfortable throughout high school is experiencing insulting comments and issues like racism, sexism, comments about body image, genders. A lot of teenagers say things and make certain jokes that are insulting to others without thinking. I wouldn't make a racist comment or joke, but it just doesn't come to my mind because yoga has conditioned me to think about what I'm saying before I say it. But a lot of people don't have that, and therefore fall into saying mindless things which come across as very offensive to other people and they don't realize. So I think something like maybe 5 to 10 minutes of mindfulness meditation or something might help teenagers in schools.
Just create a different atmosphere, right? So that people were self-regulating in the school. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, absolutely. And then that community could be more healthy and more joyful and more kind of pleasant to be around, rather than this kind of unpleasant, abusive and kind of aggressive tone which you're coming across. Yeah, totally see that. How about you, Tabitha? Have you got any visions now you're out of school? Can you vision like how it could be different, or how you'd like to see it different?
I would say that maybe if the more sort of senior members of the school, like key stage heads and things like that, maybe had a bit more training on spotting the signs of certain mental health problems, and also just managing them in general. Like, for example, I once went to my head of key stage with a panic attack and she started shouting at me saying I was trying to get out of classes and sent me back to the class. So I think the school I had was very academically focused. So I think some schools do need to have a bit more training on mental health, and it's not just us being weak or moaning about things, and that it's actually something that's very real and can be very like damaging to young people.
You speak so well, Tabitha. I really feel that you're so clear in what you're saying, and you can feel it's coming from your lived experience. I feel that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's, CAMS put in place in 2008 that everybody who has anything to do with young people should be trained in mental health conditions and be able to deal with them. And I think that just hasn't come through into school systems. And I think that really needs, that's something we could really like hammer home. This is something we need to do. And I think it's outrageous in a sense that young people like you are put in a position where you are more literate, if you like, in how to support people with mental health conditions than your own teachers, than your seniors. That is just a ridiculous scenario, but that is the fact that you three are co-regulating your friends because you know how to do that, whereas your teachers are actually making things worse because they themselves can't regulate themselves, and that's an awful situation to be in. So that's definitely a vision for the future, isn't it, where the adults are leading by example, actually, is what you're saying. And it shouldn't be the young people who are leading by example, which is effectively what's going on, And I don't know, is it Shivani, am I remembering it rightly that your teacher said to me in one of the training courses I led that the head of your school is running a wellbeing ambassador scheme, like where he wants everybody, do you know about this, where he wants every year to have like a wellbeing ambassador, but it's not yoga based? Yeah, do you want to tell me about that?
We have a mindfulness student leader club at school, so every year has representatives, and we're still trialing out what we want to take forward, but so far we've done a one-to-one peer-to-peer mentoring scheme where the older students will talk to a younger student about whatever is on their mind, and we've started an activities club for younger students so they can just focus on like having fun together, and instead of the common stresses like exams that they may face. And next week we're starting a mindfulness club where we'll be talking about things like mindfulness eating, mindfulness meditation, journaling, and opening people's minds to things like that is not taught in school generally.
And how's that being accepted by the kids? And what's your role in it?
I'm going to be leading the mindfulness club that's going to be starting next week. And we've opened it up to year 7 and 8 students so far. They're quite enthusiastic about it. I'm not sure about how older students would respond because it's not something that having like a mindfulness club or a support group is not something that has been implemented in the past. So it's a bit different to them.
Like a new idea for them. But year 7's is a great year to start something new, isn't it? Because they're much more open than year 10's, for example.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that, Shivani. I think it's fantastic that you're basically running this scheme, and I think I just want to be absolutely clear that any adult doing something like you're doing would be sure to have a mentor, and that if you want a mentor other than your teacher there, Beth, what's Oddie? Miss Oddie, is it? Was Denton? Then reach out to us, because we do have people who will do that for free. So if you want an adult that you want to have like Zoom chats with or chats with about what to do or how to do it better, then I think it's important that you would have that you don't feel alone with this, because I don't want it to be a stressor for you. I see your vision and I applaud it 100%. I think you are going to be really important in changing the culture of your school, which is huge, and it will be such a great thing for you to carry forward in your professional life as well, something that you've done like that, because you'll know that what you're capable of. But I do think any role like that, I think most adults in this chat would agree that any adult doing a role like that would want mentorship or support, wouldn't they, Diane or Sophie? So I think if you want that, do reach out, and we've got somebody who can help you. There's several people who've said they'd like to do that, who are quite experienced in that kind of thing. And that could be anything from, what kind of class can I lead, and what happens when this child says this to me, what can I say back, anything like that. So I know you have support at home, but you might reach out if you need any more support.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Grace, how about you? You've been quiet for a while. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this? Like, what would you like to see in schools? I mean, so Shivani has said she'd like to see kids being just a little bit more mindful, so that they're not so mean to each other, and she's actually putting this thing in place now. And that's quite a straightforward and simple kind of change that she's making that could have very profound effects. Have you got anything else that you'd like to add, that you'd like to envision, apart from, you started this conversation off saying it's a bit full on, that you're just studying the whole time, you don't have free space to to be with your boyfriend, to be with your friends, to do your yoga, to just hang out and feel pressure-free time, which is so important. Is there, have you got a vision on how that might be kind of put in place?
Well, I definitely think, especially my school, but I'm sure a lot more schools now, there's definitely guidance on mindfulness, and there's definitely talks on mindfulness and ideas about it, but it feels very much like not that they're saying it for the sake of it, but they're like, oh, you should, it's told that you should get loads of sleep, and that you should, do relaxation and do exercise every day. And because obviously meditation or relaxation is different for different people. Like exercise for some people is meditative and things, but then there's such a busy workload, and schools start, I have to leave at 7:40, which isn't that early for some people, but then other people obviously leave a lot later for school, and then I get back around 4, and then you have so much work, and then you have to pick between doing work and exercise, and then you'd never have enough time to sleep. So I think there's so much mindfulness talks going on, and there is arguably stuff at school, but I don't think that school is, I can't think of the word.
I know you're absolutely. I understand exactly what you're saying. They're not facilitating that, actually.
Yeah.
They're just saying do it, but they're not giving you the space to do it.
Yeah,
and that's what they need. And the conversation needs to come back to them, where they're saying, okay, well, you're right. You're saying all the right things, but you're not giving us the space to do it.
Yeah.
And so, look at our workload, look at how much time we're spending on our homework. That needs to be cut down, because we're already at school for 8 hours a day. So can we cut the workload down so that it's only an hour or an hour and a half a day, rather than 3 or 4 or 5 hours, right? So this kind of thing maybe would be the way to address it. And I mean, I would say think big, think in terms also, you guys are the leaders of the future. The schools don't have to have exams. That's not necessary. You can have schools where teachers are continually assessing your work, and they're kind of feeding back, and there's more of a kind of holistic report and a holistic education. That happens in many, 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 many countries. So that's also a vision to have, and also just kinder communities is what I'm hearing from Shivani as well. And I think that probably goes for both of you, that kindness, to educate people. We all understand that school is not only an academic education, but it's also social education. Like how do we socialize? How do we get on together with people that we might not meet otherwise, like in workplaces, on train stations, bus stations, all over. And how do we do that well? And school is a kind of learning place for that, isn't it? So how do we learn to be kind and compassionate, and that could somehow be permeated in the school scenarios? I'm hearing that from you too, and I'm hearing that that's something that you get from yoga, and that you get from your yoga community very much, and that's what you're bringing. You're kind of distilling that, Shivani, and you're calling it mindfulness because that's more kind of acceptable, and you're giving that to the 7 and 8 year olds. Am I correct in my assumptions? Yeah. So maybe this is the time that I'd like to open it up a little bit. It's 6 o'clock, it's almost coming up to 6 o'clock now. So opening up the conversation now. I know Diane's always got lots of lovely questions, and I'm sure Sophia and Sophie have as well. I don't know about Belinda, I haven't heard from her yet, but Diane, do you want to ask any questions to Grace, Tabitha?
I mean, it's just like really, it's so lovely to hear you speak with such awareness and experience. Number one, it's a real honor just to hear you speak. And I've got 2 teenagers myself, 13 and 15, and it just, I mean, they really educate me as well. And I just think the academic world is so narrow, and yet once you leave education, you have to just be so flexible and just throw your hand at anything.
That's a very good point. It doesn't necessarily train you for that, does it?
It doesn't train you. So my son, who's 13, he doesn't really see the point of education in terms of, unless it's just preparing you. He said basically education seems to be that I'm told a bunch of things and then I have to tell those things back in order to prove that I've heard them, which I thought was quite an interesting way of putting it. And then, you know, the working world now is so different. We don't tend to do one job. I'm already on my sort of 3rd career at almost 50, yet we're still kind of, it's so tunnel visioned, like early on, and more so than in other countries where they do many more subjects. And yeah, I suppose yoga is one way of upskilling for life, isn't it, rather than just the academic piece, which just prepares you to be an academic brain and get exam technique nailed.
I think you're repeating and you're kind of refining a little bit and putting your own twist on what's been said several times here, Diane, which is really important, and really important to repeat. What you're learning when you're studying chemistry, maths, English literature is very specifically academic, but what actually is happening and needs to be more kind of maybe explicit is you're learning how to be a good person.
Yeah.
Right? And you're learning how to adapt and, you know, speak to other people and take command of situations, but also, you know, listen to others and respond to others and be a creative part of a team. All those things are also happening, but they're not being explicitly taught. And I think there could be much more focus on that to build you for a different future than what was in the past, because not everybody is chemical engineers and doctors. I mean, the percentage is, you know, 10% or something have those kind of jobs. Absolutely right, Diane, absolutely right. And that yoga could be a part of that puzzle in the sense that it gives us tools to help us to be a more kind of self-regulated and more aware of ourselves in relation to others.
And just that, sorry, I did say this one thing, and then, you know, just really teaching how to listen rather than just get your point across. And I think that sort of feeds in to what Shivani was saying, just in terms of the, you know, that more community feel, like having more spaciousness around points of view and not just getting your own point of view across. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Did Grace want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've just started A-levels and I've come off the back of GCSEs, but I would say that A-levels, as draining as they are, give back to you more, and you do have more community and interaction. And what you're learning about, obviously it depends on the subjects you're doing, but you're furthering your research about that. And obviously some subjects there's more like philosophical ideas, and I think that's good. I think things like GCSEs, after having done them, or even just lower school in general, I personally feel that GCSEs are an outdated part of the system now.
Right.
That is,
we could rethink that completely.
Yeah,
it's because it's just general knowledge, isn't it?
It's a regurgitation of information. And I understand things like English, maths, and science. It does set you up for your A-levels and what you're doing later in life. But I'm
just letting my cat.
I also think, not even in regards to GCSEs, but just lower school in general, of secondary school, that I would not remember any like French that I did in like those years. But then the stress I felt for, like, I am an anxious person, but the stress I always felt at school about academic stuff, which like didn't have any relevance to what I'm doing now or anything I'll do in the working world. I think it can be a lot more relaxed so that school isn't just academic when you're younger. I do think there's an importance of examination in A form and obviously learning and education. But I think when you're at that age when it's not like directly important, that focusing on more community and relaxation when you're younger is so much more important, because now you're at an age where you have to be stressed and you have to be thinking about everything and working all the time. But you weren't at that age when you were a young teenager. So I just...
Really, really well said, Grace. Really well said. That is so clear. Thank you. So Sophie says, apologies, my house is a little loud with a 2.5-year-old running around. Just a question to the teens. If or when you do have time to exercise, where do you go and what do you do? YouTube, Joe Wicks, etc. So what do you do when you want to go and exercise? What kind of exercise do you do, Shivani?
Well, in the morning, I do my yoga, but after school, I always either go on a run outside or do a home workout. I make sure I do at least half an hour to an hour every day. I think it's very important to prioritize that.
Yeah, it makes such a difference for you. Yeah. Tabby, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm sort of somebody who doesn't like exercise, and that's one of the reasons also why I love it. It's the first thing that I did that I didn't feel like. Basically, the reason I don't like exercise is I usually just feel bad if I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
But what about yoga is that it's not about being good or being competitive. It's about tuning into you and sort of paying attention to what you can do.
Right.
So for me, I'd say exercise-wise, I mainly only do yoga. I'll do the odd workout, but I like to almost put it into a yoga sort of technique. So if I want to do a workout, I'll do like, when you lie on the floor and you lift your leg and when you breathe in, you touch your toe. I did that with my yoga teacher, and it's almost like crunches, but it's done in a breathing technique way. So it's sort of into doing the exercise. Yeah.
And do you it by yourself, or do you have it like in a group, or how do you?
It depends. For like everyday exercise, I'll do that by myself, especially because I'm on my gap year, so I don't, I'm not really
got time.
Yeah, I'm not really around like big groups of people because most of my friends are off at university and things, and they don't do stuff like that in my area because it's a small town, like gym wise. But then obviously when I teach my yoga lessons, if people I always ask them what they want at the beginning, and if they want a more upbeat one, I'll make it more like a workout. So that's sort of how I get my exercise in. Yeah.
That's great, Tabby. Great. How about you, Grace? What kind of exercise do you do? Is it just yoga, or do you do other things?
No, I like to go on runs, but obviously, I mean, when I get home, it's literally dark already, so I can't do that. So I usually go to the gym. Well, I don't usually. I have a gym membership, and I do try and go to the gym. But I have to say, I'm so tired at the moment that I find it difficult, which is a shame. I even timing wise, I have to pick over like doing my homework or going to the gym, which is probably not a good situation. But I don't love the gym environment. Like I would prefer to go for a run or a walk because it's more like relaxing than obviously like quite an intense environment. But yeah, I try to go to the gym.
So all of you have your own personal yoga practice, which is something we tried to establish when you were doing your ambassador course. And I think some of you already had, but that was definitely something that's part of the ambassador course is getting the young people to start their own practice at home and feeling confident to do that. And I think that's such a gift to be given, to think, okay, I can do this by myself. I don't actually need a teacher. That's a huge gift, and I'm so glad that you three do that. I think that's going to stand you in good stead for the rest of your life, because that's part of the self-regulation, isn't it? What do I need right now? Okay, I need a nidra, I need a meditation, I need a visualization, I need some really strong exercise, and knowing yourself, it's part of that self-regulation. So Ruby had a question. I would be interested in their thoughts on the health of the body, diet, etc. And do they consider that with well-being? So Ruby, do you want to open up your mic and ask the question, because it's a little bit unclear?
Well, sort of that really. And I know currently there's a lot of conversation around mental well-being and health, but a huge amount of that also comes from the physical being and from diet led, and how we go about things day to day, looking at things Ayurvedically. So I'm just kind of interested on how much that's perhaps tapped into and thought about.
Yeah. So starting with you, Shivani, how much do you think about diet? And I mean, I think it's clear that from from their responses that that you know, all of them know that physical exercises help them with their mind. But do you think about what you eat as well, Shivani?
Yeah, I really do. I think diet and exercise are both equal in terms of what they do to your mind. Like, if I am lacking in exercise, I'll feel lazy and unmotivated. If I'm not thinking about what I'm eating, I'll again feel lazy and unmotivated. But if I'm consistently running or consistently making sure that I'm eating certain food groups in every meal, it makes me feel a lot better. And yeah, I would say that I think about that a lot.
That's great. I mean, this moves. I mean, there's a fine line here, isn't there? Which I know Diane is really interested in, which is this kind of orthorexia, where we become very obsessed with, you know, eating well, and what does that mean, you know, and clean foods and all that. And I think, I'm sure that all of you have met or know somebody who slips very easily into that, and that can become a disorder. So I think it's difficult to find that sweet spot where we care about what we eat and we don't want to eat rubbish, but equally we're enjoying eating and we're enjoying our foods, you know. So for you, Grace, is that something you think about, or do you find yourself endlessly picking at bags of crisps and chocolate bars? And
well, I unfortunately am a stress eater, so that I do try and be healthy, and my family eat well, so that's good, like a lot of organic and vegetables and stuff. But I definitely find like I actively stress if I'm not eating well, but then I eat badly if I'm stressed, if that makes sense. So I get stuck in like a bad cycle, because I think it's so difficult to eat well in this day and age, because all food is so like processed, yeah. And unfortunately the healthier food options are way more expensive, and this is a broader thing, but for people in cost of living crises, I think, is it Asda that do like a cheap, not cheap range, but it's targeted at people who don't have a lot of income at the moment, but it's all such processed food, and I just think it's such a shame that because it was so reversed like years, obviously
100 years ago, yeah, exactly. You grew your own vegetables and you made your bread with the grain that you grew, and absolutely.
I just think it's such a shame that people eat badly, and I do try as well. I have to say, like, especially at school, I don't know what it's like at your schools or what it was like, but the food is not very healthy, and obviously
I think this is also something, you know, if you wanted to kind of find a drum to bang, that would also be another, you know, we've established two here. One is that, you know, school teachers and leaders need to be more aware of mental health and how to treat it, and the other one is food in schools. Literally, I mean, how can we hope that young people are going to be well if they're eating rubbish, right? And I see it every time I go into a school. It really is so poor,
and I think it's so but it is difficult for schools as well, because I go to a state school, and I understand that they use extra private food manufacturers, which I think do. Obviously they don't provide them. But I think obviously the funding and stuff is such a shame that you just don't have the money to have good food. But I try and I bring healthy food to school, and I do eat it, but then I also buy unhealthy food. So
if I had been half as aware as you are now about why and how I ate at your age, life would have been very different. I think the very fact that you're aware that you stress eat shows a huge awareness and self-control, I think. How about you, Tabby? What's your relationship to food? Are you
well, for me, I've got a lot of friends with eating disorders, because I've been to girls' school the majority of my life, and it's for some reason very prevalent in girls' schools. One friend who's had an eating disorder since year 7, so she'd be about 11, and she's now 19.
Wow.
And has such severe like bulimia, that she's like her complexion is completely grey, and so just seeing what it does to people, I don't let myself really think about what I eat. Obviously I don't actively try and eat bad food, but just because I've seen that slippery slope, and with my OCD it's quite common to want to control things like food, so I don't get into that mindset even, sorry. But I also so my dad's Spanish, so I do eat quite a Mediterranean diet, so even though I don't limit my like calorie intake or anything, I do tend to eat quite healthily just because of what's cooked at home. So
yeah, I'm going to re-echo what Diane says. Your self-awareness, all three of you, is so extraordinary. Like, you know, Tabitha, you're like, okay, I've got OCD, so if I go down that route, I could, you know, it could be dangerous for me, but I'm just going to enjoy my food, but not. And then you, Grace, you know, oh, I stress eat, so I have to be aware of that. And you, Shivani, you know, food groups. I mean, it's just beautiful to hear. And it doesn't, to my mind, it doesn't sound extreme. None of you sound like you're kind of extremely, you know, OCD about food, but you're just aware of the impact that the food has on your well-being. And I think, you know, you are such great ambassadors for yoga in that sense, because you're living it. You really are living it. And I would wage a bet that 50%, 75% of your teachers probably do not think the same way as you about food or sleep or well-being. And that's not great, because actually they are role models, and even if they're not explicitly talking about it and sharing it, you know, it does have an impact on your friends. So I think, yet again, I'm coming full circle to say that it's extraordinary that you are in fact the role models for your friends more than the leadership in your schools many times. And that it is wrong, but it's the way it is. But I think it's also hugely inspiring, in my opinion. Sophie, we haven't heard from you. I know Sophie Campbell can't speak, but Sophie, maybe you'd like to say something.
Yeah, it's very interesting all you say, and I keep thinking of the comparison with the French system, because you're describing the British system, and it was criticized that in the French school we have less support for mental health, but I see that for the food, I see at least in London in the Lycée Français, the food is very good, and they put like a big emphasis on this. They have big days, but they want the children to have a proper break with proper food, lots of fruits and veg and nice dessert like éclair au chocolat or things like this. It seems little, but it really cheers up the children. And I find also that it seems to be less pressure academically.
Wow, really?
Like 11 plus. I hadn't heard about this in France. And the equivalence of GCSE is a brevet, but it's really straightforward. In fact, I think some children go for it, but they already passed it well, because they take into account all the notes that they had during the year. So I mean, the equivalent of
that's what I mean. So they're taking account the reports they've had throughout the year.
Yeah.
And there is a continuous assessment, as opposed to this one day will define what your result is. Yeah,
exactly.
It makes it's much more humane. I didn't realize that, Sophie. That's actually really interesting.
So yeah, when you speak about like what we do know, I mean, there's lots of bad things about the French system, but now I can see the positive, and I think, yeah, there's less help with mental health, and it's a big issue as well. But I think that maybe also it's a cultural thing, that there's more community. I mean, my dad is Spanish, and when I go to Spain, I can see how the children are supported by their family. So, I mean, it's great that you create this yoga community. And I mean, we can create our community, but it's very important. Thank you for all your
great reflection, Sophie. Great reflection. I think that's the community aspect, I think, is coming through loud and clear, isn't it? So how do we build a kind, compassionate community? Keeps coming through, keeps permeating through, and that you three are all part of that. And so many other ambassadors out there who aren't here today are doing that as well in their schools. But also this concept that food, I think that was really interesting, that food is a really big part and really important in the Lycée Français. But I think also the community in Lycée Français is obvious, because it's a small community in a different community. So you have your French community within London, so that's going to be very specific, you know, much like the community I grew up in, the Swedish community in London, which was very specific and very kind of boundaried and clear. But yeah, creating community, creating connection through community, and creating kindness and compassion within that community seems to be the focus of everything that you're saying. And I'm really excited for what you guys can bring, not only to your schools, but also to any kind of workplace that you might work in, or any managerial positions that you might have, with these visions kind of so firmly embedded in your minds. You know, really exciting. I think I'm going to finish there. Oh, Diane has something. Go on. So speak up.
No, I mean, it's just an add-on. Just, you know, I found the ambassadors, just, you're so emotionally articulate compared to most adults. I think it just,
definitely it puts us
like...
to shame, doesn't it? Yeah. No. I think possibly. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, but it's also a sad thing. I think that it's wonderful because it helps us understand, but it's sad because the reason is because they all three of them, you know, have shared a little bit, but they've shared that, you know, they themselves or their friends have gone through stuff that they've had to get their head around from a very early age, you know, from where we went through it blissfully unaware, you know. So I think that's where that awareness comes from, and it's a kind of almost precocious awareness, like it's a precocious kind of maturity. But I'm hoping that it can be in service of the greater good, you know, and that you guys, because I know that you've suffered, because you've shared that with me, you know, that your suffering will be transformative for other people, and I believe it really will. I think it is already in Shivani's case. My God, I mean, what an amazing thing to be, you know, rolling out a whole system in your school, you know. And Grace, I hope you find space in your school to be sharing yoga. I don't think you're doing it at the moment, are you? Or
I tried, but I think it's quite difficult with what's the word, where they need, like, you need certain checks, like basically DBS checks, or
DBS checks. I
can't get them because I'm not 18, so there was a child protection issue.
Oh, right, okay.
But I wouldn't be able to teach people alone without a teacher supervision, and obviously, like,
that costs money. But you could have a TA in there.
Well,
yeah, I understand. I didn't. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I get that. That's problematic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll just leave it there. If anybody has any other questions, I think we've exhausted our questions. Wonderful conversation. I'm glad that you guys got to experience that. Sophie, Diane, Sophie, Ruby, and Belinda briefly, and I know all the other people who'll be watching it on record. And thank you so much for your time, specifically Grace and Shivani. I know you're so busy right now, and Tabby, everything that's going on with your dad. So appreciate very much you taking time out to talk to us. Super important. And I think we'll just wrap it up there. So have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye. Bye, guys.